There was the sound of the beating of drums, then the echoes from 1,000 women singing and dancing, hailing the goddess of the moon, which was being heard all over the temple. Men in their regular uniforms marching around the magical pool, believed to have powers needed to defeat their enemies. But the might of the kingdom Korra would be tested, and out of it shall birth its powerful weapon, the dragon named Balas. Yes. An ancient dragon formed from the depth of the never-ending fire lake lying beneath the resting place of past kings and queens of ancient kingdoms. The exact beginning of the dragon Balas has never been known. However, legend has it that it was first discovered and ridden by Queen Sheba. Despite the past glories of the kingdom of Korra, it all changed when the red sun appeared. Blood spilled across the streets. Men begged to die but couldn't. Women had no choice but to parade naked throughout the outskirts of the kingdom. And a child dying at every dance of the dragon. It all began when kings sought to consolidate their power in the realm. Weaker kingdoms were faced with their worst nightmares only with the hope of their surrender. Surrender or die was the only slogan of King Kano when, together with his wicked elders, decided to wage war on the surrounding kingdoms. The armies of King Kano were fortified in the mother of rivers to make them ruthless and duty-bound. The aim was to show no mercy and have each kingdom ruled by one overlord, King Korra. Next on the raid list was the kingdom of Korra, which was ruled by a young king at the time. King Zandi, as he was called, proved to be a hard bone to crack for King Korra. Despite the terror unleashed and the fewer military resources of the kingdom of Korra, they were not subdued despite the numerous attempts. King Kano grew furious. "Who is this idiot?" shouted King Kano in the forecourt of his palace. He did not understand how the young king could withstand the might of his armies. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Korra, tensions began to grow. The young King Zandi summoned his elders to find a way to end the terror. Before the day would break, varied voices could be heard from the inner court of King Zandi. His trusted elders each had varied opinions concerning the next course of action to take. "Let us march on to them, now," shouted Elder Mito. Facing disapproval, Elder Polo countered with the claim that it would be best if they surrendered to King Kano. He argued that it would be better to be a coward and live than to be brave and die. Confused as he was, the only action King Zandi took was to adjourn the council meeting to cool tempers. The troubled king retired to his bedchambers after everyone had left the palace courts. Seeing her troubled husband and king, Queen Sheba tried to comfort her love. Sliding into the arms of his beautiful queen, the king found solace. Narrating the ordeal to his wife, the queen asked permission to share her plan. Desperate for a solution, King Zandi asked her to proceed by telling her the plan. The plan was simple. Queen Sheba encouraged her husband the king to take the battle to King Korra. However, there was a little twist. The queen suggested that the king should negotiate the terms of the battle with King Korra. "Let our best warrior face their best," said the queen. "After the fight, whoever loses would serve the other," she continued. The king, nodding his head in approval, saw an opportunity to reduce bloodshed and an opportunity to take over the empire King Korra had created. The king sent his envoy to King Korra suggesting a meetup. They returned with the news of acceptance from King Korra. 2 full months later, King Zandi rode with his first son, Prince Zito, to the kingdom ruled by King Korra. In the wisdom of King Zandi, he didn't want to create any unnecessary scenes. Upon arrival, King Korra, despite his earlier raids in the kingdom of Korra and the trouble he had caused, welcomed the young king awaiting his proposition. Straight to the point, King Zandi offered an alternative to the fighting. As suggested by his queen, he proposed that the 2 best fighters from the 2 kingdoms should fight to the death. The loser will surrender his kingdom to be ruled by the other. King Korra smiled. He was amazed at the wisdom of the young King Zandi. However, King Koro made his demands. Despite showing no opposition to the proposition from the young King Zandi, he demanded that the fight should be between the princes of their kingdoms. In utmost surprise, King Zandi agreed to the terms offered to him. King Koro presented his warrior and leader of his army, Prince Fela, while Prince Zito stood up accepting the honor to fight for his beloved kingdom. The date was scheduled and King Zandi returned with the prince to his kingdom to prepare for the duel.
King Zandi summoned his elders at once upon arrival. He discussed what had transpired between the two kings. At the chants of war songs, the queen was deeply troubled. As a mother, she couldn't afford to lose her only child. Her cries could be heard all over the palace courts, pleading that her son should be replaced in the duel. However, her cries were not enough to undo the agreed pact with King Koro. She pleaded with the elders to overturn their decision, but it fell on deaf ears. The kingdom was in support of the young prince proving his worth as the heir to the throne. The set day arrived. The two princes faced off as promised, carrying the honor of their respective kingdoms. The sound of the battle drums could be heard signaling the beginning of the fight. After several jabs and sword wounds, Prince Zito fell to the ground after a fatal stab at his neck. The cries were amplified at the instance of the death of the prince. As agreed, King Koro announced a total surrender of the kingdom of Koro within the next 4 market days. Fuming with rage and regret, King Zandi could be heard pacing in the palace. "How can I lose my son and my kingdom?" he said. The entire kingdom of Koro was in absolute shock. They could not believe they would spend the rest of their days as slaves to King Koro. Meanwhile, Queen Shebo grew cold at heart. She fumed so much that she blamed her husband the king, and the entire kingdom for the loss of her only child. The queen woke up the next morning setting her path towards the shrine of the chief priest. Upon her arrival, she laid her petitions to the chief priest. "What brings you here, my daughter?" "Revenge, Baba," replied the queen. After listening to her ordeal, the chief priest requested the queen to make a sacrifice to the gods. A human sacrifice that will appease the gods to grant her a weapon for her revenge. In a chilling twist of events, the chief priest clarified that unless she sacrifices her husband, the king, her request would not be adhered to by the gods. Queen Shebo left the shrine confused as to the next step she should take. Upon reaching her quarters in the palace, her rage got the better of her and she decided to sacrifice the king. She believed the king was not strong enough and had sacrificed her only child. She was also of the view that the kingdom of Koro could not surrender to King Koro and she desired to rule herself. After many tries, the queen finally got the king to accompany her to the shrine. In such a horrifying moment, the king was sacrificed as previously discussed with Baba. The ground began to shake, the bells of the shrine began to ring, and the fire furnace lit up beyond the normal. Baba could be heard reciting incantations and dancing with a smiling face. "The gods have accepted your sacrifice, my daughter," said Baba. Before the queen could respond, the bells rang louder, the ground split into two and smoke could be seen all over the place. An image with green eyes began to emerge from beneath the ground. A strange roar began to be heard. Within a moment, a dragon could be seen in all its might. Queen Sheba, in awe, climbed the dragon and immediately named her Bolus. She rode out of the shrine into the beaming skies. With such power, the wings of the dragon covered the light rays of the sun. At the command of the queen, the dragon unleashed fire from its mouth to burn down the high towers in the kingdom. It didn't only end there. Queen Sheba flew her dragon to burn to ashes the elders of the kingdom who approved of her son being killed. Men could be seen running around in circles, clueless as to what to do with such evil. The screams of children and women could not be missed. The might of the dragon was as though the gods themselves were unleashing anger. Finding a plain field, Queen Sheba unmounted her dragon. With her eyes as the red sun, she proclaimed herself as the new overlord of Korah, and asked that all should bow and worship her. In fear, every human of all ages, whether male or female, could be seen bowing down to their new overlord. In haste, the queen mounted her dragon heading towards King Koro and his kingdom. In a grand display of might, the dragon burned down the palace, ending the bloodline of King Koro and the killer of her dear son. The queen destroyed all that came her way. Fear began to grow through the grapevine as other kingdoms heard of the ruthless evil queen. Queen Sheba, using her dragon and having unified every kingdom, ruled as a supreme leader. In such evil and wrath, she ordered that on every market day, a female child should be offered for her dragon as its meal. This was in accordance with what Baba had told her. In so much fear, children were being fed to balance the dragon, and as it feasted, it grew powerful. After many years of pain and agony, the United Kingdom cried for a redeemer. A hope that can defeat and end the reign of the evil Queen Sheba. Despite this renewed hope, fear still trembled in the hearts of people. It was wondered all over how the ruthless queen and her dragon could be defeated. The cries of women who had their young children sacrificed to the dragon could be heard day and night across the entire kingdom. The elders of the kingdom grew tired of the daily happenings around them. A select few, who had decided to sacrifice their lives when the need arose, embarked on a journey far away from the kingdom to seek a solution. The journey ended at the doorsteps of an old priest of one of the conquered kingdoms. The priest offered to help since he understood the terror that was created by Queen Sheba and her dragon. The priest counseled the group of elders to feed the dragon with one male child. The elders began to look at each other with suspicion, since all they knew was that the dragon was only fed with female children. But the priest explained that the dragon is an ancient creature who was created to get more powerful with female children. However, to return it to the lake of fire it came from, it had to be fed with a male child. The elders thanked the priest and set out on their journey back to their kingdom. Upon arrival, the elders understood that the queen took an interest in her dragon being fed, and that was all that mattered to her. The elders resolved that they had to make one last sacrifice but should have a male child offered. One of the elders who recently had a male child offered that his child be used as the sacrifice. Despite the difficulty and unwillingness, the market day finally arrived. The male child was dressed as a female with the hope of confusing the queen. At the market square, the queen called forth her sacrifice to the dragon. A few minutes after the dragon had devoured the child, it became restless. The dragon began to behave strangely. Its movement was not the usual, and that made Queen Sheba worried. Before the very eyes of those present, the dragon pounced on the queen and ate her up. Within a twinkle of the eyes, the dragon flew into the skies and was never seen. The kingdom rejoiced, and through the help of the elders, they began their reconstruction journey. They decided not to have a king or queen yet, but rather the kingdom will be governed by the elders. Peace and calm were restored over the years, and the dragon was never heard of again.